Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Jim Patterson with Wickersoft, and I'll be presenting some concepts today on accelerating Office 365 and Microsoft Teams value with a hybrid project and portfolio management solution. Joining me is Matthew Willey, one of our product gurus, and he'll actually be leading us through a live demonstration of these concepts and showing you how these concepts are actually here and available for customers to take advantage of today. Just a couple of housekeeping items. The lines will not be open for questions. However, there is a question panel in GoToWebinar. If during the webinar you do have a question, please type it into that question panel and we'll try our best to answer it during the course of the webinar. And if we don't get to every one of them, we will definitely respond to you via email shortly thereafter the webinar. Also, if you get pulled away or distracted in any way during the webinar, that's no problem. We're going to be sending out a copy of the slides that are presented today, as well as a link to a recorded version of the presentation. So with that, let's get started with the topic today. So in this modern work management world, teams are choosing their own tools as opposed to in the past where maybe organizations were imposing or choosing tools for them. The idea is that people and teams want to be able to work how they want or how they need to, depending on the types of work and the methods that they use. Analysts are finding that 73% of companies are using agile methods for managing their projects today. But even almost a like number of companies are still using predictive project management, meaning the needs for the different teams based on the types of projects that they're working on and the methods that are using may require or dictate that it might be best if people use different tool sets to make those things happen. Also, teams want simple and visual tools. They want to be able to start fast without a lot of heavy training and have it be intuitive so they can get going and get productive very quickly. And that's the mindset of today's millennial workforce. They're used to an app culture where you install an app and begin using it right away. Analysts have found that today, projections are that 50% of the total workforce will be comprised by millennials by 2020, and that by 2025, 75% of the workforce will comprise a millennial component to that as well, meaning that this becomes even more important as we're trying to serve the needs and meet the demands of our workforce. And also, our key processes span the enterprise and span wide geographic or global ranges. And we need to adapt and automate tools to make sure that we have an integrated, seamless, and synergistic process that's manifested in those tool sets. Analysts are finding that 79% of companies need cross-functional communication within matrix type organizations, and it may be across silos that exist within departments or business units within those organizations. They're also finding that the trend is towards non-technical or non-IT staff being able to perform those integrations or link those things together so that they can work together without having to lean on IT or developers to make that happen. And they're saying that 65% of large organizations will enable their non-IT staff to perform such integrations by 2023. So we see a trend more on the self-serve side of things. And this goes more towards the simplistic side of things that we talked about earlier, and the fact that business users will be enabled to do these things rather than IT professionals. Compound that is with the teams choosing their own tools and the ease of access through the cloud of such tools. Many organizations are finding a great proliferation of tools across the organization. In just this example, for example, we have down the vertical left side the different functional types of things or tool sets that might be used. And across the top, we're looking at different departments or organizational units within a company. And you can see in this matrix, this is an example of a customer that we were talking to, that if you think about the tools that are in place, the standard Office 365, Outlook, and Excel, and Microsoft Project, or the non-Microsoft things like Jira, or maybe even Azure DevOps, using PowerPoint and SharePoint and other things like that. The proliferation of these tools that are being used for these common purposes, but being done slightly differently depending on where you sit in the organization, is creating kind of a hodgepodge and even heavy work efforts and lack of efficiencies in the way of bringing these things together that we see in the marketplace. And these things kind of tend to happen organically over time. What we're going to talk about today is Wickersoft's One Plan and how we can further connect these things by connecting execution with strategy within an organization, being able to leverage within the context of the tool sets that you already have to combine and create a more seamless user experience, regardless of the tool sets that are being used. Here in this particular example, we're looking at One Plan in the larger graphic at the top, being contributed to by things like Office 365 Planner, Microsoft Project, Azure DevOps, and even then some. And the idea is to be able to enable this all within your Office 365 platform and all the tool sets or the enablement that's in there, but be able to do these types of things in the context of that platform that you've invested in and that you use for your general business productivity tools today. So if we think about One Plan as a project and portfolio management platform from a top-down perspective, right within Office 365 and right within components in there like Teams that we'll talk about, we can do portfolio planning and portfolio management. We can do resource capacity planning. We can do financial management planning and tracking. And within that, we can then incorporate the use of a variety of different tool sets that we might have, whether they be work plans we do from a variety of tools, including Microsoft Project, time tracking that we might want to do, or maybe even more agile things that we're doing using agile tools like Azure DevOps and Azure Boards. The idea is to have these things working out of the box together in a way that makes sense for the organization and having the right tools in the right hands of the right people, depending on their roles in that portfolio and project management process. To further empower this, we want to empower teams with a fused Microsoft user experience. So when we talk about bringing these things together, we can actually enable this in whatever part of that Microsoft Cloud platform that you tend to live in, whether it be Project Online, whether it be Azure DevOps, whether it be Microsoft Dynamics. But today, given the topic that we have today, our focus is going to be on Office 365, specifically leveraging the SharePoint component of that and Microsoft Teams to bring this to the user community and be the focal point of their user experience today. We'll cover those other topics in other webinars and those other platforms as we go through. So if you're not familiar, Microsoft Teams is growing like wildfire out there. It is now officially the fastest adopted tool in Microsoft's history. And it's designed to be a hub or a central forum for teamwork in Microsoft Office 365. The idea is to bring together conversations and chats and files and other applications to be brought together in one forum so people can easily get their work done from one user interface hub. And it's a powerful platform because it can incorporate more and more out-of-the-box connections, like we talked about integrations, bringing both Microsoft and non-Microsoft tools into the mix. And there's an ever-growing number of services or tools that are becoming available to that list daily. And the idea is to be able to have that forum and use it as a focal point to get to the things that you need to do easily. Whether it be just looking at your calendars and your meetings, your conversations and your chats, all the way to the applications that you use for business productivity, as well as project and portfolio management. So if we think about connecting people and tools in Teams as the hub, this graphic just illustrates with Teams in the middle, a more conversational, collaborative platform to which you can enable in each of your teams the use of SharePoint, the use of OneNote for sharing notes and other types of information, being able to use a One Plan for project portfolio management, resource capacity planning, and to be surface and visualize the data that we're capturing in Power BI to get powerful dashboards and things like that, all accessed from within Microsoft Teams and or Office 365. So with those concepts, I thought it'd be more powerful to just show how they're doing, how we're doing these things today. And Matthew Willey is going to give us a demonstration of these things in action. So Matt, it's all yours.
Perfect. Thank you, Jim. All right, I'm logged in here into Office 365. You'll see up in the top left, I have my waffle and I get access to all of the different applications that I have access to. So it uses your same login, same username and password, and all of these applications work together really well. For example, later on, we'll be seeing a little bit of Teams, some Power BI, et cetera, how it all kind of ties into the mix. So what I'm looking at here is the home page. On the home page, we have some quick links to different things, status reports, have an idea, want to submit an idea, so on and so forth. We can also tie in other Office 365 applications like Yammer. If you wanted to include a Yammer comment stream, we can tie in event calendars, documents that are tracked in SharePoint and or OneDrive and Teams for that matter, and we'll see that in a second. All right together here on one kind of main page. Jumping into it, we'll go through a process from beginning to end, starting out with a new idea and working our way into, getting project approval, building out my roadmap of when things are going to happen, into, really going and executing and closing out projects. So the very first step, a place where this can all start, is with an idea or a new request for a new project, if you want to call it that. And so instead of having people send emails, and asking you things in the hallway and tracking multiple different Excel spreadsheets, what this can do is this can be your one place where all of those ideas or requests go into, and we can capture a standard set of information when we do that. For example, I'll click on one of my requests that's already in here, and we can see we can capture information like a brief description of what's going on. What priority is it? Who's it being requested by? Estimated benefits, possible costs of this as well. Is this related back to a specific executive sponsor? As well as we can start to gather some light prioritization information. In this case, I'm using WSJF, weighted shortest job first. However, we could do more of a traditional business driver based score as well. And we'll actually see that as we go through the demo here today. But really, this is a place where you can collect all of these ideas. Think of it like a big funnel. A lot of ideas are flowing in from different places. And then based off of the information that's filled in, we can decide if we want to move it to the next step or not. We're not necessarily saying, yes, we're going to do it at this point. We're just saying, yeah, that looks interesting. Let's do a little bit more analysis on it based off of all the information that's going in here. We can even allow people to come in and vote on these using star ratings. And the idea is with the prioritization information we're capturing and the ratings that we're capturing here and or other scoring methods, we can allow the better or more valuable ideas to bubble their way up to the top. Once you go, yes, this is something that I want to do, I can come here and I can click the three dots and I can say I want to convert this into a epic or project or program, depending on the terminology that you're using, of whatever bucket of work that this is going to end up creating. And so that's kind of the very first step, bringing it all in together and then promoting it onto that next stage if and when we're ready to do so based off of the information that's been filled out to this point. So moving into the next step of this then, I now come into my list, in this case of all of my different epics / projects. And you can see some of them are in various different states. Some are proposed, some are active, some might be closed. And you can see the different statuses on these projects of how they're doing from an overall perspective, a budget perspective, schedule perspective, and other metrics that we might be tracking around them. And so at this point, once that idea has kind of been promoted to become a real project, again, we haven't yet said, yes, we're going to do it yet. We want to do a little bit more analysis and figure out how we're going to do it within our constraints. We only have so much money. We only have so much resources. We need to make sure we're prioritizing things accordingly and then building out our roadmap or timeline of when these things are going to happen based off of those priorities. So a very first step that we can do to help that process along is we want to get a better idea of the resourcing it's going to take to get this project done. So meaning, is it going to take one person, 5 people, 10 people, 50 people? Is it going to take 3 months, 6 months, a year, multiple years? What are we looking at here from a resource scope perspective? And so the resource planner here within one plan allows us to do just that. What you can see here is I've have a resource plan that's already built, I can use high-level generics, like I could assign a whole team. I need team 1 and team 3 for a particular period of time. And or you can do more like named resources. I need Daniel Williams, Lori West, and Kono, especially if you're working with smaller groups of resources. You may already know who might be working on this particular item, or who you would like anyway to work on this particular epic in this case. So you can come in, you can build out your resource plan. Right from here, I can look through my list of candidates and come and find resources and search by name or by department or by role. I need another developer, and see who's available right in real time, and see what they already might be working on and if they're available or not, and then add them into my resource plan. So it makes it really quick and easy to build out these high-level resource plans. At this point, I'm not building a schedule. I'm not building a detailed backlog of work. I'm really just doing a high-level top-down resource plan that we can use for capacity planning out in the future to make sure that we're going to be able to staff this thing if it actually gets approved into a certain time period. Right now, I'm planning by month, but I could switch this to plan by quarter or by year, depending on what level of detail that I want, when you're going and building out these resource plans. The next thing that I may want to do is build out a high-level budget. So I switch here to my financial planner, and the first thing I can do to build out that budget is I can simply hit import, and what it'll do is it will actually, based off of that resource plan that I just put together, it'll calculate out my labor costs for me, which I'll then roll up and show here to show me my total labor costs for this particular project that we're setting up. That way I don't have to go and manually do that outside the system in Excel spreadsheets or whatever it might be. Saves me some time. It just calculates it out based off of blended rates that we would set up for our resources, as we were setting up the system based off of your rate structure. You'll see here, though, that we can also key in other types of costs, things like materials and supplies, travel and expenses, contract, software, other. But this is all configurable, so we could set this up so it would have your cost categories in here. So it would match the way that you want to break up and track your costs. You'll also notice that we have configured in here an expense type field, which allows us to track capital and operational expenses. So if you need to break up your costs into different categories like CapEx and OpEx, then we can configure that as well. Later on in here, you'll also be able to use this to track forecasts as well as actuals. And there's also compare functions in here, so we can compare these things to each other and see a heat map of the difference between them if we're over, under, so on and so forth, and get a kind of nice view of what's going on in there. So now that we've built our resource plan and we've built our financial plan, we now have more information to go start making decisions. Later on, we're also going to be able to write from here, track risks, and also up front, we could put in a list of risks and build a risk register with some basic risk information. We can also track issues, changes, and even status reports later on as we start to get further into this project. So from there, now that we've built out a high-level resource plan and we've built out our high-level budget or cost plan for this particular project, many other projects / epics are going to be flowing into this same process here, and we're going to have a lot of new proposed things, and we're going to have to figure out how to work them into our portfolio. Basically, when can we start them? Which ones are higher priority? Within our constraints, we only have so much money, we only have so many resources, we have to figure out how we're going to get this done, right? So now where I'm at is I'm in the portfolio analysis module, and I'm going to zoom in on this, make that full screen so we can have a little more real estate here. And so what we're looking at is a list of all of those different projects. Some of them may already be active, some of them are proposed. So we can include our in-flight projects and epics at this point as well. What we can very first do is start to do some drag and drop prioritization based off of the information that's here. And so you'll see the view that I'm in right now is showing a more traditional scoring method. So, what's my strategic alignment? How much is this going to help me lower costs? How much is this going to improve employee retention risk? And we can configure these with any drivers that you might want. And that all rolls up and gives me my prioritization score over here on the right. At the same time, I could do more of a agile or more modern type of a prioritization. In this case, I'm going to use a lean prioritization scoring method called WSJF, which I briefly mentioned earlier. And you can see here we can track things like business value, risk reduction, swag, time criticality, and that all adds up to give you what the cost of delay is, which ends up giving you your WSJF, or weighted shortest job first score. And the items with the higher scores are going to be the ones that you probably want to focus on based off of that analysis. We could also very easily set up a view that had both scores in it right next to each other, and so therefore allowing you to do a hybrid way of scoring and tracking and prioritizing these different buckets of work, whether they be future epics, meaning agile, and or waterfall projects that you end up going and working on. So once you have that, if I wanted to, I could simply come here and just sort by that score and say the highest one is priority 1, and then so on from there. Or I can flip this into prioritization mode here, and I can do a drag and drop priority based off of the information that I'm looking at, right? So I'm looking at objective information while I'm dragging and dropping to make my prioritization happen. So I go, okay, let's look at this one here. This guy has a WSJF score of 16, although he's number 5 right now. I think we should probably, move that guy up so I can drag and drop him and get a priority ranked order here based off of the information that I'm looking at, as well as, gut feeling and other things I might know about these as I'm doing it. Or CEO says we have to do this one. It doesn't matter what the WSJF score is. I'm going to drag and drop that up to number 1, right? So once you have your prioritized list of projects, and you can be reprioritizing and moving things around as needed, every so often, the next thing that I need to do is look at, well, how are we going to stay within our budget as well as our resources, constraints to get this all done. And so what I just did is I popped open my financial grid down here in the bottom, and what it's showing is all of these different projects, the budgets that we put together in the financial planner earlier, all totaling up to the top here. And I can then compare that against a target budget. So meaning, across all of these different projects and epics, I only have so much money. In this case, my budget is $150,000 a month. Are we going to be able to remain on target if we go and do all these things that people are asking for? And you can clearly see, no, we're going to have some problems, especially starting here in May and on. So how are we going to fix that? And we have a couple of different options. One option is we can go to these lower priority projects down here at the bottom, and if we have a choice of not doing them and or putting them on hold, not every business has that choice. Some people have to do everything, it's just a matter of when. But if you do have that choice, you can uncheck these guys here and say, what if I don't do these bottom priority 3 projects? You'll notice it'll refresh here, and as I uncheck things, you'll start to see some of that yellow and red and such going away until we finally get ourselves on track here. We could also look down and focus on the projects in those periods of time that are taking the most budget and specifically uncheck those as well to see how that would affect things. So that's a option. What if we don't do it and or put it on hold? The other option that we have in here though is we can simply say, well, what if we stagger these a little bit more? And so what I did was I popped up in my timeline or Gantt view over here on the side, and I can again come to some of those lower priority projects, and I can simply drag and drop them and say, what if I push that out a couple quarters, right? How's that going to affect things? And so we can start to drag and drop and move things around and stagger these a little bit better to get those costs, into an area where it makes sense. So what I'm really doing here is I'm building out my roadmap of how and when I can get these things done, right? So you have multiple options there of how you can make this all work. But instead of just putting projects in where people are asking for them to be done, we can make sure that that's still going to fit within our overall budget. At the same time, a lot of people have resourcing issues, meaning, we may have the money to go and do these projects. The money's been approved, but we don't necessarily have the resources within the periods of time they're being asked to be done. And there's maybe specific areas or groups or teams of resources that are impacted that are constantly having trouble keeping up with project demand. And so now what this is showing is a very similar view, except it's all resource based. So you can see my different resources here and see where we're over, under, so on and so forth. And again, I can start to do some what if. What if I don't do these projects? How's that going to affect my resources? So I can uncheck them and let that happen, as well as I can drag and drop and move things around and get it to a point at which this is going to make sense. This is going to work. We're going to be able to stay within our resource constraints. as you build out these what if scenarios, right, we're not actually changing anything right now. We're just what ifing. What if I do this? What if I do that? I can then come here and I can save these as scenarios, and I can come back to them at any point. So scenario 1 might be we don't do these, bottom 3 priority projects. Scenario 2 might be we move them out, 2 quarters, or whatever it might be. And then we can come back to those scenarios at any point, review them with, say, a steering committee or a larger group, and make a business decision on how we're going to go and attack this and actually get this work into our portfolio and come up with a time that we can start to work on it and execute on it. So I'm now done my portfolio analysis here. There's a couple other cool features right here. One is a lot of times people then want to view their portfolio of work in a Kanban board. In this case, I could show it here by stage. So here are all of my work buckets in create, all of my ones in select, plan, manage, so on and so forth. And we can drag and drop things to update them as we see fit. But I can also switch this grouping on the fly. What if I wanted to group this by priority and do a quick priority check here, so on and so forth? I can do that. And or other attributes, maybe I want to see it by business unit, so on and so forth, then I can come in and do that and drag things around and align things into the proper places is really what it comes down to. There is also a roadmap view here. So if I come into the roadmap view, you'll see it's going to show all of those different projects, epics, what different buckets of work that we have going on. You'll see a % progress on those guys here is what that is. And you may have noticed in the timeline as well as in the roadmap view here, there are some linkage lines being drawn. You can create dependencies or relationships between these to show where one is dependent on another. So when you're doing your planning, you can make sure to respect those dependencies as well. But this view is really nice for communicating out to stakeholders, to customers, to others, when things are currently planned to happen, what's the progress of those, and really show that roadmap and or timeline of what's going on. So now that we've built out our roadmap, our plan of when we're going to do these things based off of our top-down resource plans and financial plans, we're going to go and say, yep, I approve these ones, and there can be a workflow behind this, a process flow where we can go through different stages and have different approvals. But once those are approved and we lock in a time within our constraints, now we're going to get ready to go and actually execute on those. So we need to go and do some more detailed planning before we can do that execution. To do that, there are multiple different options here. In particular, excuse me. Oops. In particular, I'm going to come back here into one of my views, like my summary view here. And we can go into one of these different items, and depending on if this project lends itself better to being agile or waterfall, we have different options for how we're going to go and execute on these. So for example here, I'm going to go into my support customers using mobile project, and I'm going to jump into that guy, and I'm going to come into my schedule here. And so if this was a waterfall project and I wanted to go build out my waterfall schedule for it, then I can do that right here within the online planner, as well as many people want to use Microsoft Project Desktop Project Professional. And so you'll see here, this particular project is actually connected up to Project Professional. And so what I've done is I've created a new project in Project Professional, and I could start from a template and or I could build this from scratch. And then I can connect this up and simply come here and publish this out. And that's going to take my project schedule and publish it up into the hybrid PPM solution there, so that everything all rolls together. It's going to automatically roll into reports. People are going to get notified when they have tasks assigned to them. It kind of takes all these separate project desktop files and brings them all together, so we have one version of the truth, one place to see our entire portfolio, so on and so forth. But I can still use Project Desktop to go and manage my projects. At the same time, if this was an Agile project, I can connect this up to tools like, say, Azure DevOps or Jira for that matter as well, and go and build out my backlog of all of my different features, user stories, task bugs, etc. under this particular, in this case, Epic, and let that all roll back in and have all that information come back into here as well. In some cases, like this project, I may choose to do both, what we call a hybrid project, where we might be using a schedule to communicate timeline and show where key milestones are going to happen and such, while we may be using an Agile tool for the more day-to-day tracking of the different work items that people are working on. So you can choose to use both is what I'm saying if you want, and or if it's pure Agile, just use that, and or if it's pure waterfall, just use that. So you have a lot of flexibility in how you go and actually execute on this work. So once you've done that, we're now going and we're executing and we're working on all of these different items. We can actually spin up teams for these different items where your team can come in and execute and update status and really, you know, communicate and share documents and whatever it might be that needs to happen. So you'll see that some of these projects here are actually connected up to teams as well. For example, this VoIP phones project. And so if I go into Teams here, you'll see I have a team that got automatically created for that particular VoIP phone project, you know, based off an option there. You can choose to create it or not. It spins up a related team. And where it takes me initially is into the conversation area. So if there's something that we need to start talking about or a link that I want to post or whatever it might be, I can come here into conversations and I can start communicating with people right from here. There are also many different apps, like there's a praise app in here that's actually kind of cool that you can use and say, hey, great job for leading the team to release to completion or whatever it might be, and utilize that to help track who's doing well and what's going good, and kind of as a way to encourage people to continue on. And there's a ton of other apps in here as well that you can add into this. So if I hit more apps here, there's a full app store with all kinds of things that you can use across you know, different types, as well as bots if you're looking to automate certain functions, etc. All tie into Teams that really make this a much more powerful platform than what it may seem at first glance. Going back into my team here, I can do things like store my files here for this particular project and or Epic as well. I can create my folders, I can put my files in here, share these with other people, do check in, check out. We can be working on them at the same time via the web in real time. So if there's a spreadsheet that both you and I are working on at the same time, even if we're in different locations, it allows for all of that because it's all built into the platform here of Office 365. With that said, all the things that we did in one plan earlier are actually available through here as well. So, you know, that resource plan that we built, the financial plan that we built, the portfolio analysis, the project schedule, the backlog, that's all built right into this as well. And this isn't just like a read-only view of things. This is actually a live working tool here where I can come in and, you know, automate and update with all the different, you know, data, update my status, whatever it might be that's going on within here, right? All right, from within Teams as well. So if people want to work through SharePoint/Office 365, if you're working there all day, every day, you can, but you can also come into Teams and do all the same things plus more, you know, all the extra things that Teams allows you to do, but it all goes to the same place, right? It all works together. I also have a OneNote notebook built into here, so every time we have a meeting, team meeting, and I want to keep my status notes related to what's going on, I can come in and put in my meeting minutes and, you know, fill all that out and keep that all related right back. If you wanted to use the Office 365 planner for to-dos, I can tie that in right through Teams here as well, so on and so forth. You can even tie in Power BI reports. So in this case, I have a Power BI report in here, which is my project status report. This is reading from all that data that we've been putting in, right? The budgets and the forecasts and the resources and the status of the tasks, issues, risks, you know, so on and so forth, all roll into our out-of-the-box set of Power BI reports. So we can see what's going on and or present that in more of a kind of one-page format. So this particular project, here's the status of it and all the other information that's going on for that right now. So we can show those reports right within here. If people want to update the status of their work and or put in their timesheet, they can also do that right from within Teams. So if I go into my work, by the way, I could do this back out in Office 365/SharePoint as well, but I can also do it from right within Teams while I'm working if this is where I work every day. So what this is doing is showing all the work that's assigned to me, and I can come in and update the status on those. I can comment on those items right here if I have any questions about what needs to be done, and I can update my status. As well as if you're an organization and or a group that needs to track time, we need to understand who spent how many hours on what. Because we're bringing all of these different projects, whether Agile or Waterfall, other all together, we can come in and we can track time across all those, and I can even do it right from within Teams. So here's all the different work that I've been working on. I can come in and put in my time on these and say how long I've worked on those particular items. At the end of the week, I can then save and submit this timesheet, and that can be routed through an approval process if needed as well. So you can see you can kind of work completely within Teams. And then if there's other applications that you're using, like say Azure DevOps or whatever it might be, then there's lots of other connectors in Teams here. So we can actually connect in a variety of other tools. There's a ton of options in here that we might be using to work on this project. We can tie that all into this same team, so that we have one place to go really to get access and update status and work on all the different things we need to get these projects and epics done. So it really can help kind of bring everything together into one unified experience is what it comes down to. So with that, hopefully you can see how we can manage and track projects all the way from ideas into execution, into closeout, with governance and approval and portfolio planning all along the way. And then we can allow team members and others to come into Teams and work the way they want to work and update their status and do everything they need to do right from within there as well. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Jim for a couple closing comments, and then we'll let you guys go for the day. So here you go, Jim.
Thank you, Matthew. Very enlightening presentation. And now we're just going to summarize and wrap up and have some potential next steps for you guys. So in summary, what we showed today was that there's a modern user experience that's expected by today's workforce, and that's becoming more and more so over time. Office 365 is the business productivity platform in use by many organizations today for all of their business productivity needs. And as a subset of that, Microsoft Teams provides a common forum for all communications and work. And we can leverage that in the context of hybrid project and portfolio management. And OnePlan provides a hybrid PPM solution for Office 365 and Microsoft Teams, as you saw it being used within those contexts. It leverages Office 365 and Teams to just overall extend the value of that platform and the reason you invested into that connected platform to begin with. It can also incorporate tools that are appropriate for the user role and maturity and type of work. You saw the use of different execution tools feeding into that OnePlan piece. And that allows us to support a variety of execution methodologies. By doing so and being that flexible, it improves adoption by streamlining access and navigation and provides a better user experience that's targeted to the work or the person that's actually doing the work. So that drives better participation and hence better compliance and more complete data. Overall, by tying us all together, we just get overall better collaboration across all areas of the business on these cross-functional type of efforts or efforts that go across the geographically dispersed teams. And the idea is to do this within SharePoint directly, to do it within Teams, is just a matter of user choice of how they would like to enable these capabilities. Wickersoft, who brings you OnePlan, is a global company. We are proud to say that we were named Microsoft's 2019 Worldwide PPM Partner of the Year. We can help you with your needs in a variety of fashions. We're a full-service company. We provide advisory services, meaning consulting on transformations, change management, business process, strategies and planning, all the things that you might want to do if you're trying to modify and transform the way you do business. As you can see, we definitely help people implement solutions, not only Microsoft solutions, but incorporating the intellectual property and solutions that Wickersoft has generated like OnePlan, and we can help you enable those things and get them up in your organizations. And operationally, we can help you with any of the consulting. We provide staffing, so if you have contingent staffing needs in these areas, we can provide that as well. Training and support to help with your adoption, and any managed delivery or managed services that help you become successful. As far as next steps go, if you're interested in what you saw today, we can offer you a free mini assessment and roadmap, meaning understand where you're at today and give you an idea of what it might take to get you into the types of solutions you saw here today. If you're a little farther down the road and about to make a decision, we can enable you with a hands-on trial and provide some chaperoned Wickersoft support so that we can have you get the most of the time you invest in getting hands-on with these tool sets. Or if we're interested in the generalized demo we saw today, but you have some use cases and personal requirements for your organization that you'd like to explore, we're happy to schedule a one-on-one demonstration and or discovery session with you in advance of that to kind of tailor this presentation more to what your needs are in your particular companies or organization. Best to reach out to us via email at contactus@wickersoft.com. There's additional information on our websites at us.wickersoft.com or oneplan.ai. And we have a whole roster of both previously recorded on-demand webinars and a schedule of our upcoming webinars that we have up on our website, as you see at the URL below. And you'll get these slides, so you'll have reference access to that. Just as an alert, our next webinar will be next Thursday, August 22nd, and it's going to be called Demystify Portfolio Selection and Prioritization with Lean Portfolio Management. So extending onto these concepts. With that, I would like to thank you all for spending some of your valuable day with us. And I look forward to having Wickersoft help you or help you further explore these concepts and these tool sets in the future. Well, we look forward to hearing from you. Thank you and have a great day.